I'll never forget one of my first seller calls. Everything was going great. I felt like I had the deal locked up. I was getting all excited. And then I got hit with a question to where I had no idea how to respond. I was fumbling my words. I didn't have an answer to the question. And let's just say it ended up costing me the deal. And if I had known then what I know now, things would be completely different. So in today's episode, what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be breaking down the most commonly asked seller questions and how to respond properly. Let's go ahead and jump into it. My name is Anthony Weiler, and I've coached hundreds of people in the land flipping space on getting their first deal under their belt and being able to grow and scale their land flipping business from there. So what I have pulled up on my desktop are the most commonly asked seller questions. I have around over 20 on my screen here, but I'm going to break down probably the top 5 as I go through this list. And I'm going to start with number 1, which is, how do I know you're legit and how do I know that you're not a scam? Now, believe it or not, this is the one that actually tripped me up, that cost me one of my first deals. And this is definitely one of the most commonly asked seller questions. And it makes complete sense, right? People are sending out offers wanting to buy their land for like $60,000 or more or less. And it's an all cash offer with a quick close, a lot of promises in there. And if you're the seller, for example, obviously there's going to be some concern for you, I'm sure. It's a very reasonable question. And the way that I responded, I'll never forget. I remember saying, well, I have a website. You can take a look there. And he was like, okay, well, what the hell does that do for me? Anyone can build a website. And I just froze. I was like, well, yeah, that's a very fair response. I said, you can, like, we'll leverage a title company or a closing attorney that can handle the process. But they didn't even really know what that meant, right? And I didn't give them any information on how to leverage that. So again, if someone were to ask you like, hey, how do I know you're legit and how do I know that you're not a scam? One of the best ways to respond to that is, hey, that makes complete sense. It's a very reasonable question. I actually get asked that all the time, and I don't blame people. You're receiving offers all the time. So how this process works is so if you are accredited, just a little side note before I get into everything, if you are accredited by like the Better Business Bureau, that can definitely help, but start with leveraging like a local title company or closing attorney. So you could say, well, what we do is we actually leverage local title companies or closing attorneys in the immediate area close to you that are legally responsible to make sure that the ownership transfers over correctly, and they handle all of the paperwork as well too. So just how you want to make sure that I'm not scamming you, I need to make sure that you're the actual owner as well too, that there's no liens or encumbrances involved. And what the title company or closing attorney does, they go back as far as like 20 years, sometimes even 100 years back to go back in the title to make sure there's no break of chain and make sure that there is no reasons for it not to be able to transfer over. And they are going to be the ones who will pay you out as well. Again, they are going to be your best point of contact moving forward. They handle all the paperwork. You could even close in person, receive a check in hand if you would like. Again, they are legally responsible to make sure everything transfers over properly. So just like how you want to make sure that I'm legit and a real person, I need to make sure the same thing for you, and the title company or closing attorney handles all of that. So again, that's a little wordy, make it your own, but I highly recommend using that. I use that all the time and it helps out a ton. You could also say too, a little cherry on top is if they've used a title company or closing attorney before in the past, you're more than happy to reach out to them, see if you're able to leverage them. That can definitely help really bridge the gap in terms of having that trust available to them. So what I would do next, or the next question here, is how long does the closing process take? This one is actually quite common. You could say anything of like 2 to 4 weeks is very common. I like saying 30 days now, just unless you have a title company that you've leveraged before in the past. And the reason for that is going through the title search, and the title company can answer all of those questions for you. Now, keep in mind, if this is a double close, that's completely different. That's going to be a 90-day close window, or however long that you have that contract available for you to be able to find that end buyer. So that's a very simple question. Another one is, how do you determine the value of my land, or why is your offer so low? Those are probably, I'll probably say why is your offer so low is more asked than how did you determine the value of my land, but they're pretty much interchangeable. There's multiple ways that you could answer that. So if someone were asked like, hey, well, why is your offer so low? I always like responding and saying like, it sounds like you have a number in mind already. Since I threw out a number to you, if you don't mind sharing, what you're looking to get for it, I'm more than happy to take a look to see if I'm able to be competitive or be able to match that. So I like asking something like that, or you can give them a longer answer of how you're able to come up with that. So what I have here pulled up is it's based off of market data, recent sales, and costs associated for preparing the property for improvements. So one of the things that we do is we specialize in buying properties quickly and with cash, so you don't have to deal with agent fees, closing costs, and uncertainty of the open market. Now, this one I have it pulled up, and that is something that I'll read verbatim. Not something that I always recommend, but once you go through it enough, it definitely sounds clean. But that is one I still have to have pulled up to review to make sure that I say it the way that I would want. But that is one of the best ways to respond to it, in my opinion. Then I always like asking that question of like, it sounds like you have a different price in mind. Okay, so let's see. And also, again, that determines into how do you determine the value of my land. So you could say like, we take a look at comparable sales, current market conditions, for example, the capital that we have currently available, and any potential improvements that would need to be made to the property. So this next question, I would say, is probably the most asked question in comparison to how do I know you're legit, is what are you going to do with my property? And there are some pretty creative responses that I've received from sellers. Some people thought I was going to build a Waffle House. Someone thought I was going to build a racetrack on 5 acres in Ohio. And that's not what we do. What I like telling them is, hey, that's very understandable. What we do is I partner with a handful of what we do is we partner with a handful of investors, and what we do is we take a look at the property's potential. We normally do some sort of a value add play, whether it be some sort of clearing, adding a better driveway in the front if there's not a driveway already, hooking up utilities, for example. And we really take the community into consideration, and we want to be able to then sell it to a family, for example, or a farmer or a hunter, whatever the capabilities are with the property. We are going to be looking for a good end buyer to increase the community's value. This is very important for us as investors to be able to give back. So there are a ton of different things of what we can do with the property. I know that's a mouthful, but hopefully that answers your question. So that's how I like to phrase it. People really struggle with that because they'll say, oh, well, I'm just going to put it back on the market. That's like, well, why don't I just put it on the market? Right? Like, it's just kind of common sense on that one, in my opinion. One, two is like, there will be times where there's back taxes, for example. That's completely fine. Those taxes are just going to be added onto the settlement statement, for example. And what happens is that's just going to be lowered from the overall money that they'll be receiving. So let's say like, hey, I owe $1,000 of taxes on the property that haven't been paid yet. Like, hey, that's completely fine, sir. My offer price to you was $20,000. Those back taxes, for example, will be taken out of that, the amount that you will be receiving. So instead of $20,000, you'll be receiving $19,000, for example, to cover the taxes that are owed. And let's see here. I would say those would be the biggest ones. Also, how do I get paid? That's something that the title company or closing attorney can easily establish with them. They can either close in person, they can get a check overnighted to them. Funds can be wired directly to their account as well. It's a handful of options of what they can do. But again, those I would say would be the most commonly asked seller questions. There's a handful more to definitely go through, but I really wanted to give you an understanding because I have a handful of new coaching clients, and I put them all on the spot the other day and asked them a handful of those questions to see how they would respond. And they all froze up. And I think that's completely fine. That's great, because the reason why I put you in that spot is so you can get some reps and you can understand, the most commonly asked questions. That way, when you have leads on the phone, at least you have some sort of reps in and some sort of understanding of how questions can come to you. And so you can be better prepared to respond, to where you're not like me. If someone asks, how do I know you're legit? And you just tell them to take a look at your website. That doesn't really do anything for them at all, right? So again, hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions, or if you think there are other commonly asked questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to take a look, but I'll see you guys in the next one, okay?